So we have some time tonight to do some dialogue. So if anybody wants, if you have a kind of anything that came up for you just listening to the talk, anything that's been coming up for you in your meditation, anything you want to share, it's all welcome. Okay, Diane. And if you want to talk, you can just raise your hand down at the bottom. There's a reactions button, and you'll see how to raise your hand there. If you can't manage that, if you just unmute, you fly to the bottom of my list and I see you too. But the hand is easier because if there's more than one person, it lines them up in order. Okay, Diane, go ahead.
I had two thoughts while I was listening to you speak. First of all, sort of exploring the term equanimity. It's something I've been thinking about more and more. And I think that in my personal life, when I've come close to that, it's usually when I'm able to let go of expectations, which is a tough one for me because I'm
Beautiful.
like control and planning but when I
Yes.
can let that go, I think I've potentially come close. I don't want to say I've, maybe approaching that, but something that I thought someone commented at work that I am much less reactive, things kind of falling apart. And I guess I smugly thought, must be all the meditation I've been doing for the last year and a half. But now I'm wondering about the near enemy because I think we're struggling with burnout and a sense of helplessness. So now I'm not so sure that that's equanimity or kind of giving up. I think you said I'm not sure how you use your example, but it made me think. I'm not sure that's equanimity or that's the near enemy of equanimity. Those were my thoughts.
Beautiful. I'm glad you're noticing. So that can be your homework for the week is to notice and see if you can distinguish. I'm betting there's some of each. I know the burnout feeling is like, a certain sense of withdrawal. And if you notice the withdrawal, then it's not really equanimity, it's withdrawal, it's shutting down in some way, a different kind of non reactivity. But there's a good kind of letting go. You can't control things, you can't control everything. And I think of the serenity prayer as one of the, simplest yet most profound statements of equanimity that I know, to be able to know what you can do about a situation, have the wisdom to know the difference between something you can change and what you can't change. It allows peace to happen, you know. So as you go through your day as a physician, and there's a lot of pressures on you, just notice the difference between genuine equanimity and a more checked out, tired, defeated kind of stance. And so letting go, I guess, can have both flavors, if you can look at it that way. Letting go can be resignation, which is a kind of a aversive letting go, or letting go can be true letting go. It can be like, I can't do anything about that, I just can't. Um, Here's where I can actually make a difference. Here's where I can actually focus my attention is the place that I can actually make a difference. And let us know. I really welcome hearing back about this. All right, Mickey.
Hi, thanks. Um, so I'm having thoughts about non-reactivity versus noticing your reactions. And I'm skeptical about non-reactivity, or at least aiming for that, unless I'm approaching enlightenment. So for instance, raising my hand, anticipating raising my hand, I noticed my heart beating hard. Now, that isn't something I can control, but you could call it a reaction to a kind of fear about speaking. So I noticed that, but I don't condemn myself for having a reaction. So I fear that the idea of non-reactivity means I shouldn't even have a reaction, rather than I should just notice the reaction and then make a judgment about how I act.
Yeah, this is great. Thank you for this question because it's really relevant. So, did you get imbalanced by the fear that arose in you, the shyness or whatever?
No, I went ahead and
You went
I
ahead.
chose to go ahead and act.
Yeah. So that to me is about equanimity. The fact that you remained in balance even though you were scared, even though you didn't let the fearful part of you take you over and determine the outcome. You just raised your hand anyway, you know? And so the fear didn't take you over and it didn't imbalance you. And yet you get to be human, you know? And we have lots of things that go on inside of us that are quite automatic and we don't choose them. And I think you're right that oftentimes equanimity or non-reactivity, it promotes this idea of someone who is unaffected by anything, you know? And I much prefer the image of you raising your hand, even though your heart's pounding, as an example of equanimity. And not holding up some ideal that you would never feel your heart pounding, that you're never going to feel fear about sharing, trying to compare yourself to that. I think that would be suffering. I think that would be suffering. And so acceptance is a huge part of staying in balance. So if you can accept the fact that fear comes up in you, then you're less likely to like blend with it and let the fear control you. You just accept, okay, this is a frightening experience. Fear happens, doesn't it? and and so sometimes I prefer the word poise, maybe, because you can stay balanced or poised in the midst of fear coming up. You know, I've seen people balanced and poised in the midst of grief coming up. You know, the eyes well up, they cry, and there's a certain way that they don't lose their presence in the midst of that. They have some sort of grace in the midst of their grief. Whereas there are other people kind of contract around it and, you know, do other things. There can be a comfort with that, whatever's flowing through you. I've also observed people who seem to handle anger somewhat skillfully, you know, where they get this kind of flush of reactivity, but they notice it and they're kind of honest about it. And when you sense that they're able to both be angry and be present at the same time and not be completely taken over by it, but nonetheless, there's a feeling present. So those might be images of equanimity that don't necessarily go with this impassive image that we have of it, the impassive face, you know. And And there's also a kind of trust that the heart actually needs to mature by itself. The heart doesn't mature because we make it look like the way we think we're supposed to be. That has never been the path to the heart maturing, is trying to look like you're supposed to be. At some point, maybe if you remain balanced when you're afraid and raise your hand, at some point you might notice that's not present, that it's really an easy thing for you to do. But that would be the maturing of something on its own. It isn't something you're supposed to make happen. It's not what you're really, if there's a supposed to here, it's the noticing, it's the being present with and remaining balanced with whatever arises. All right, so that was a great question. I think it helped clarify things.
Something I just want to comment on that you said that seemed really important to me was a person feeling grief and crying shouldn't necessarily think of themselves as being reactive.
No, not necessarily.
You have these strong feelings, but that doesn't mean you can still be in balance even with those strong feelings.
Right, and in some ways, grief can actually bring you back into balance, actually allowing it, because that is what, in fact, you feel is loss when you're feeling grief. To provide the ability to stay present with that can be very helpful. So, I mean, and technically you say, well, yeah, there is a reaction to the loss. There's a feeling about it. But the point is not to become unfeeling. It's not to become unfeeling. There's a natural maturity that comes along. And there can be a real and a deep acceptance of loss as a part of this world. That is the maturing of wisdom, a deep maturity about that. And that is not the same as trying not to cry or becoming insensitive to one's grief, trying to not be reactive. All those sorts of trying behaviors are egoic in nature. They're our ego trying to get us through something by the way we're supposed to do it. And so my sense of this path is it's helpful to have a deep faith or deep trust in how the heart matures if you give it what it most needs. And I love the Buddhist teaching because we're often offered something like, well, just be mindful, be present. That's the foundation. Wise attention is the foundation for equanimity. That's what equanimity builds itself on. It doesn't build itself on a sense of trying to be the way we're supposed to be. That builds itself on top of an ego, Whereas if you just keep being present, keep being mindful, creating the room in any experience to be present, the heart matures. It matures on its own, and we can trust that. Okay, Anna.
Thank you. I say Anna, actually, but that's okay.
Anna, okay.
I'm just so moved that you chose this as the topic. We talk so much about just the practice itself, and like, this is almost like a faux pas to say, like, well, where am I going? How far did I get? And I think it's very much an aha moment for me to go, wait a minute, maybe some of this is happening a little bit. I was just thinking back to being a teenager. I've always been really into theater and drama. I'm a very explosive kind of personality. And I asked my grandma, does it ever even out? I feel like I'm on this roller coaster ride of emotions. She says, oh yeah, it will by itself as you get older. And I really didn't feel like that. I was the person that would just have a screaming hissy fit in the street if I found a parking ticket in New York. Just, rah! Even as a 20, 30 something, I just get so worked up. And I think maybe incrementally, especially as I can see really clearly in my parenting practice, most of all, there's little just inklings that someone could do something really outrageous, like, okay, I have a white zafu, white meditation. It's the only thing I really care about. And my child intentionally peed on it. It was like the broken glass jar. Like, oh man, I care about this, right? And I just didn't go there. And so that to me was like, okay, all right, there's like a little baby step. So I'm just really grateful that you're bringing this up, and it'll be fun to see, like, okay, where am I still getting caught here? Because there's definitely a lot of places like that. But my question is about preference, and maybe that's something we're gonna get into as the classes unfold. But I'm just curious. I feel like it's in some areas of my life like falling away a little. Like I don't know. Like I could die, I could live, it's cool. I could eat this, I could die, it's cool. Just I'm feeling like that to me is where I'm also seeing some like this is the equanimity. Either way is cool with me.
All right, good. Yes, that kind of falling away of preference is definitely in the heart of equanimity, and we will be talking more about that, about preferences in relationship to equanimity. And boy, you've got a powerful teacher there in your in your home, two of them. And yes, equanimity. Wow. Equanimity as a parent it's like the ultimate test of anyone's patience. So yeah, I appreciate that you said that. I think it's helpful to notice what is right. It's helpful to notice equanimity when it's there. It strengthens it. It's not being proud or being conceited. It's acknowledging reality. And goodness knows there's enough that's discouraging in life. It's nice to have, to balance out what the mind tends to have a negative bias. It tends to notice what's wrong. It tends to, see the things that are difficult. And so it's really important to notice what works out, and to notice the maturity that happens. The last thing maybe I'll comment on is your grandmother's comment. I think there is a way that you do become more equanimous with age, but not necessarily. I think there are very reactive old people. I don't know that wisdom automatically comes with age. It depends on how much you've learned from your experience. And so I wouldn't expect it to be a given, but I think you're on the right track. I think, just listening to the Dharma, applying it, meditating, letting your child pee on your zafu. Well, not letting them, but when they do, letting that just be what it is all a good sign that by the time you're old, you will have found greater equanimity. All right. Okay, well, we are at our time for tonight, folks. So you've got your assignment to notice what to notice. Moments of equanimity, moments of non-equanimity. Begin to discern that and discern the genuine equanimity from the kind of pseudo equanimity that we often have. That's plenty. And meditate every day if you can. All right. Be well. Take care.